If you have ever been on an airplane, you would know that before the plane takes off, the flight attendant instructs you on what to do in case of an emergency. In case of an emergency, the plane may lose altitude. We may have to make an emergency landing. If that's the case, then an oxygen mask will drop right above your head from where you're sitting, and you will place it over your face, and you will secure it to your head so that you have oxygen that you can breathe while we make the emergency landing. Once you have your oxygen mask on securely, if you have a child with you, then put the oxygen mask on the child to help the child. And everybody who's taking the flight that day and watching the flight attendant or watching the video instructing them on what to do in case of an emergency, we all just kind of go, okay, we don't think about it. But there are some of us who say, well, why do we do the things we do? Why do we need to take care of ourselves first as the adults and then help the children secondarily to that? Why are the children second? Why not first? Shouldn't the child be first because they need more help? They're just innocent children. Shouldn't they be first? And the answer to that is that adults know how to do things. Adults now know how to react appropriately in emergency situations. Adults have life experience and education and an understanding of the way things work, more so than a child does. If the oxygen masks dropped from the little compartment above your head and you ignored your own needs and put the oxygen mask on the child first, there is a slight chance that you could pass out in the middle of trying to help the child, which means that both you and the child would then be compromised. So this is why they want the adults to quickly and efficiently, using their life skills and their understanding about the way the world works, do it first, because they can do it much quicker. If a child tries to do it on his own without the adult's help, he might put it on top of his head, he might put it on his ear, he might not secure it properly. So the adult needs to be available and in the room and fully competent and fully awake in order to correct the oxygen mask on the child. Some children are very good at mimicking adults. If the oxygen mask falls from the little compartment above your head and you say, okay, little Billy, follow my instructions, do exactly what I do, and you put your oxygen mask on and you secure it tightly to your face, he will mimic you, because children love to mimic the adults. They love to, especially parents and grandparents. They love to do exactly what the adults that they look up to do. So the child will imitate what the adult next to him is doing, and he'll put the oxygen mask on at the same time that you're putting yours on, if he's, say around like age 5, maybe. Anybody below that is still too young to really understand. They might try, but ultimately they might get it wrong. So both you and the child will put the oxygen mask on, and once yours is secure, you can then adjust his to make sure that it's correct. And so you're less compromised. You have, less of an issue in case there is an emergency landing that needs to take place, and in case the cabin loses pressure. So that's why they always say, in case of an emergency landing, you put your oxygen mask on first, and then you help the child. That's why. So I hope that has explained it. This video that I'm making is to implore the adults in the room to take charge and to be the example that the children need right now, to lead by example, and to save yourself, and in turn you can save the children. Right now, my husband and I are working on a documentary called Lifelong Learning. Lifelong learning is the pathway for the child's life. This is the curriculum that the child will be learning when he's in school. It's not going to be the same type of experience that you and I had in school, which was just learning the basic understanding history, science, math, English, and then moving on into college, we would then get a better idea about what we wanted to do with our education and who we wanted to be as a grown-up. What's happening with children now is that they are being funneled into this curriculum through your school district and through the school system that tells them what kind of pathway they will belong on for their career at, say, like the age of 3. And in order to force a child to, take up this type of responsibility on himself at such a young age, he needs to wear a mask and he needs to socially isolate in order to train him correctly, because ultimately his pathway is going to be one of digital slavery, basically. So this is all information that my husband and I have collected for our video essay that we should be making available to everybody on this channel in about a week or so. It's really important for the children to see the adults setting the right example. And to be honest with you, from where I'm standing and where I'm sitting, I'm not seeing enough of that. And I feel like I should say something. When a child was, born 100 years ago, let's say around 100 years ago, between infancy and about the age of 6, maybe 5, 6, 7, or 8 years old, he was a child. But if you were a working class family during the Industrial Revolution, like maybe the first or the second Industrial Revolution, children were expected to pull their weight. Children were expected to go to the workhouses, go to the factories. They were expected to be indentured servants to the wealthy, and they were not paid very well, if at all. They were used for their skills or whatever. They were trained to be servants. They were trained to do things that only adults should do. So this went on for quite a few years. Little children as young as 6 or 7 years old would trot off to the workhouses with their little lunch pails and their overalls and their caps on with their fathers, and they would go and work in the factories. Well, what was happening over time is these children would come home with missing fingers or missing arms. Some of the children were abused, especially if they were in the workhouses or they were indentured servants to, maybe the wealthier class. So a group of local people got together and said, we don't want this anymore. We want our children to be in school, and we don't think that they should be having to work 8, 10, 12, 16 hours a day like an adult. We think that their childhood should remain a childhood. We want them to go to school and learn things, and then if they want to go to work when they're at adulthood or near adulthood, then they should have that option. So these mothers and local people got together and started to push back against forcing children to go into these labor type scenarios. Too many mothers were tired of seeing their children come home in bruises, or seeing their children missing fingers or hands or arms, or getting, injury after injury after injury. They were tired of seeing that, so they started to petition for the children not to be forced to go to work, but that they could have their childhood. And it worked. And this is why we have child labor laws. This is why 6-year-olds are not allowed to go work on cars. This is why 8-year-olds are not allowed to go drive a bus or whatever. But you know what I'm saying. So this is why we have child labor laws. And officially in the United States, a child is not allowed to start working. By law, he is not allowed to start working until age 16. So these child labor laws and these concerned parents really made a difference in the way we grew up in the third and now the fourth Industrial Revolution. So it would be unheard of to send your 6-year-old off to work, and hope that he doesn't come home with a missing hand or a missing finger. That's absurd, isn't it? During this time that these parents were really advocating for child protective laws and child labor laws and making it so that children didn't have to go to work at such a young, tender age, there were parents who did not agree with this. There were parents that said, it just gives him character to miss a few fingers, or, come home in bruises, or get yelled at and exploited and abused all the time. And they encouraged for the children to go to work. They encouraged the children to toughen up and just take it like a man, or take it like a, whatever their last name was, you know what I'm saying? Take it like a Smith, This is what we do. We're a strong family, and, you see your uncle over there, he's missing a couple of fingers and he's okay, that kind of thing. So there were families that actually pushed back against those progressive-minded types that did not want their children to be exploited in the labor camps, or in the workhouses, or in the factories, or wherever. They did not want that anymore, but there were parents that pushed back on that. But it didn't matter, because the law still got passed, and the law not only helped those people that wanted their children to stop working at such young tender ages, but the law also helped the people that didn't care. The law also helped the people that didn't seem to see anything wrong with their children going to work. And that's the wonderful thing about laws, is that it helps everybody. So even if you are fundamentally against something, the fact is there are good people, engaged people, and intelligent people that will remind you that these laws are in place, and that they should be respected, and that they should be used as the standard by which we all live, whether you like it or not. So today we're going through a similar situation where children are being exploited and abused through the educational system. They just are. Putting a mask on a child and forcing him to socially isolate is a form of abuse. So it's the same as if the child was marching off to the labor camp and learning a skill and would lose a hand. The child is marching off to school right now, socially isolated, putting a mask on, which depletes his oxygen, and he's learning a skill. He's learning a skill that is going to be part of his life pathway. It's going to be part of his career for the rest of his life. How to be a good slave. And this is morally wrong, and this is fundamentally wrong, and we have child labor laws in place right now that parents could be utilizing if they really thought about it. If you believe, and there are some parents out there, again, like those parents that didn't think that there was anything wrong with, their kid losing a hand or a finger at the machine shop. There are parents also who don't think that there's anything wrong with putting a mask on a kid and forcing him to socially isolate and not be around other children. There are parents that are okay with that. You're not here to try to convince them that they're wrong. What you're here to do is to convince yourself and those like-minded people around you that you need to start utilizing the laws in place that protect the children. The laws that were passed over 100 years ago. Child labor laws were passed. I might be getting the date wrong, but you get my point, is that they were passed already. So if a child is going to school to learn about his career, if a 6-year-old is going to school and he is being set on the pathway for, his career, so to speak, then that essentially is him going to work. And if he is going to work, then you need to understand that there are child labor laws in place that would protect him. He should take off the mask, and he should not be socially isolated from his friends. I think you should use those laws to your advantage. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even a mother. I don't work in the school district. I'm just an engaged person who tends to think about things like this because we do some research for the videos that we make, for the documentaries we make, and I'm not seeing enough people really, truly understanding the gravity of the situation. So my suggestion is to be the adult in the room and live the way that you want your child to live. You're going to have to lead by example. You're going to have to be the adult in the room that says, I don't want my child to wear a mask or socially isolate because I believe that this will take something away from him. Just like those parents said, I don't want my child to go learn this skill at this labor job and lose an arm or lose a finger because he will lose his limb. Something will be taken away from him. So it's the same thing. Your child will most likely, I predict, again, not a child psychologist, not a lawyer, not really anything, but just a person who pays attention. I predict that after a few months of this type of instruction in a child's life where he's forced to wear a mask and he's forced to socially isolate, I predict that you won't recognize your own child's behavior. I predict that he may isolate himself and shut down emotionally and shut down mentally, which is what they want, because they're training them to basically train the robots. And so in order to train the robots, the children have to be kind of like robotic with no feelings. So this is what they're doing, which is the equivalent of, forcing them to go into a situation that puts them at great risk, right? Like losing an arm or losing a finger or losing an eye or being covered in bruises. It's the same concept where these children are being put at great risk to their own mental and physical health. It will affect how their body responds to sickness and things like that. Because when you're emotionally and mentally fatigued and traumatized, then you tend to get sick a lot. It's just the way the body works. It reacts to this type of abuse. So this type of abusive behavior needs to be spoken about, and it needs to be part of the conversation that you have with your school district, with your teachers, and those in charge. And if you want your child to go to school and get that kind of education, then the first thing you need to do is demand that those masks are taken off and that the child no longer socially isolates. That's the first thing you need to do, because this puts his health at great risk. Just like going to the factories put his health at great risk, okay? Another issue that I see that not a lot of people are behaving like the adults in the room is regarding the temperature checks that your employer may be requesting of you in order to do your job. And also the wearing of the mask. If you have an employer who is requiring you or recommending that you take your temperature or wear a mask and you don't want to, rather than simply complying to the employer because you're afraid that you might lose your job, give your employer an opportunity to not violate you. This is a very good opportunity for your employer to not violate your privacy, not violate your own ethics, and not violate your health, and also to not violate laws which are already in place. So no employer and no business and no grocery store or movie theater or whatever, no business out there, no establishment has the right to force you to comply to something that will do you harm, which is what a mask will do. So I would say that the best thing that you can do is that you write your employer a letter and you say, I cannot get a temperature check because I don't know what kind of thermometers and what kind of readers you are using. I don't know how effective they are. I don't know what kind of technology is behind them. I don't know if that technology will harm me, especially if you're pointing the gun to my head every day. I don't know if that technology will hurt, my brain or my skull or my pineal gland. I don't know. So you don't have to say all that, but what you would say is, I don't have any information about the technology that these thermometers are, and I do not consent to having my biodata collected, stored, and sold or given away to whatever agency is forcing you to take my biodata. I never consented to this. And then second to that, you can say, I also have a medical exemption from wearing a mask. So what you've done then is you've given your employer an opportunity not to violate your civil rights. You've given your employer an opportunity not to violate your protective rights. And you're giving your employer an opportunity not to violate your biodata by selling it or sharing it with people that you don't know anything about. It's a great opportunity for your employer to do the right thing by you. Some people have another way of looking at it. Some people say, well, if I don't do it, then I'll get fired. And I say, why not give your employer an opportunity not to have to fire you? You see what I'm saying? Why not give your employer an opportunity to respect your civil rights, to respect your individual rights, to respect your health exemptions? I think that this is very important as well. And if you start to behave like the adult in the room that I know you are, and you start to just stand up for yourself, and if each person does it individually, when enough of us do it, then it's going to become, it's going to be a lot of us that do it. And just say, I want to give you an opportunity to not violate my civil liberties and not violate my health protections and not violate my biodata. That's a great opportunity for your employer. So you need to look at it that way. And if enough of us do it, then all of the employers will say, well, I guess I'll take this opportunity then. Because what happened was, I'll just give you a little example from what I heard from another source, is that the whole city of Moscow pushed back against the mask suggestion. Remember, none of these are laws. They're not rules. They're not anything. They're just mandates or suggestions. That there was a mask suggestion, just like there is in the United States, and the whole city of Moscow just said, no, we're not going to do it. We have autonomy and individual rights, and we feel that we know our bodies better than the government, better than the mayor of Moscow. And he said, okay, because enough people were like, we're not going to do it. So he capitulated to the will of the people who voted him in, and they don't wear a mask. So imagine that. Moscow, Russia has more freedom than you. So I would say that let's take a look at those child labor laws. Let's look at them seriously. Maybe contact a local attorney. Maybe explain that you want your child to have a childhood and an education, that you don't necessarily want him to socially isolate from other children, that you would find that damaging to his mental health and to his emotional health, which would then affect his physical health. You can, any doctor, any child psychologist would support this, and that wearing a mask, you feel, is dangerous to your children in the same way that many mothers felt that having their child go off to work in the factories was dangerous to their health, because so many children kept coming home with missing limbs, missing arms, missing legs, missing eyeballs. So it's the same thing. You're sending your children off with a mask on their face. And so you have child protective laws in place already because of our ancestors who set the precedents for us. So let's go ahead and use those child protective labor laws, because school is about labor. So you have to understand that based on the information that we've collected for the new video that we're going to be presenting very soon, that school is not just about school. It's not just about, your kid's education. What it really is about is your child becoming a corporate report and becoming a corporate entity for the people who are funding these types of models and pathways that he will be learning. Okay? So he will be taught how to be a slave for his owner, basically. Given little badges, little electronic badges to be told that he's a good slave. So that has to do with following orders. And the only time a person follows orders is when they're at work. Because at school is about learning. School is about being enlightened. It's not about following orders. School is about teaching something to the children and then giving them an opportunity to learn what you teach. The teacher teaches, and then the children will hopefully, if they're engaged, will hopefully learn. That doesn't have anything to do with following orders and being obedient. But that is the curriculum that your children will be introduced to in the fall. How to be obedient, how to obey their boss, how to follow instructions. That's all work-related stuff. So again, it's just like 100 years ago, sending your children off to the labor camps, learning how to be obedient, learning how to take orders like a good little slave and a good little dog. and then getting a little pat on their head electronically through a cool badge, that's all about work. That doesn't have anything to do with actual learning. It doesn't have anything to do with it. If that's the case, which you know it is, if that's the case, then you need to apply those child labor laws to this situation. And you need to say, if my child has to march off to school every day and learn how to be an obedient little worker or an obedient little slave, then we need to take a look at these child labor laws where no entity shall put him in any danger. And putting a mask on him and socially isolating him from other children and taking away his childhood puts him in danger. So let's try to think a little bit about different ways that we can use the laws that are already in place. And if you're a worker and your employer is forcing you to do a temperature check or wear a mask, and a mask is just, for me, I can't wear a mask. I pass out. I get headaches. It's not good for me. I put everybody in my area in danger if I wear a mask. So you need to use the same language that they're using on you. If they're saying that you have to wear a mask and you have to get your temperature taken in order to keep everybody safe, then you need to say, unfortunately though, by putting on a mask, I get very sick, or I get anxious, or my heart rate goes up, and I have a medical exemption from this. If you force me to do harm to myself, which again, no agency, no corporation, no business, not even your governor, not your grandma, not your best friend, not your teacher, not your mom, no one has the right to force you to do harm to yourself. They don't have the right to do that. So if you explain to them in the same language that they're telling you, well, by putting the mask on, you're protecting everyone. And you say, actually, by putting the mask on, I'm putting everyone in my general vicinity at great risk. For me personally, I lose my balance, I bump into things. If I'm at the store, I might bump into the eggs and spill the eggs all over the place, and then somebody might slip and fall. I'm a danger to society by wearing a mask, but by not wearing a mask, I'm not. I'm perfectly fine, and I'm a healthy person anyway. I don't have a cold or anything like that. So usually you don't mask up and quarantine the healthy. That's what you do to the sick. So I would say that let's use their own language again back on them. Tell them that I would be putting my coworkers and my friends and customers or whatever, I would be putting them at great risk if I were to wear a mask. And so you need to start using the power that you do have. There are laws already in place. They are stamped into place. Your state has them, and they're taken directly from federal laws. They mirror federal laws. You are absolutely protected. You did not consent to give away your biodata. You never signed anything that said you would allow your temperature to be taken. Let's act like the adults in the room that we are. Let's give our children an opportunity to mimic our behavior and show that we know how to engage in critical thought and that we also know how to stand up for ourselves. Okay? Thanks. Have a good day. Book of Hours is determined to remain an essential platform that offers a creative interpretation for lockdown skeptics and experts who have been censored by mainstream press. Thanks to your donations, we can carry on doing this essential work as working artists. These big issues of the day are vital and need to be heard. So please share our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, make a one-time donation on our PayPal page, but most importantly, please be a part of our team on our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/bookofhours and hit the blue button titled Become a Patron. Thank you.